Hi everyone, and welcome to In Deep Geek Live, and welcome to episode 4 of the Westworld pre-show live stream. I should probably say up front, if you were coming here expecting to see this great area, apologies on her behalf. She got called in last minute to head into some vital frontlines work, so our best wishes go to her. But do not despair, we still have the man himself here, the one and only Hax Dogma. Do you want to say hi, Hax?
Hey everybody, Hax Dogma here. So glad to be back and ready for more Westworld talk.
Excellent news. And for those who don't know, Hax Dogma has got a channel, and an excellent channel at that. If you search, there will be a link down in the description as well. But if you just look for Hax Dogma, you will find him. Hax, why don't we start off just, as always, we'll spend probably first half of this looking back at last episode, roughly the second half looking forward to the next episode. Why don't you just sort of, what are your top thoughts on episode 3 that we had? That was a very kind of like Charlotte and Dolores heavy episode.
Glad for the episode. Glad that they have masterfully, looped into this idea that Charlotte Hale wasn't this crazy person, and Delos wasn't this crazy company that waited 2 weeks to secure trillions in IP. The release that Charlotte Hale was this mole, that it makes her entire plot working for Insight instead of working for the best interests of Delos. I loved all of that. I liked this concept of mirror world. I loved the mirror imagery. All over the place, reflections in walls, literal holding mirrors. So much of it was just like meant or written to be either they're telling us who Dolores is, or I'm sorry, telling us who Hale is, or telling us that it's mirror world. And all goes to the speculation of what are we actually watching this season.
Absolutely. I think they've really upped their game, not just in this episode, but I think the entire season, in terms of the visual imagery and what they're trying to tell us through what we're seeing. The eye, I particularly love it, was in all the pre-season trailers and everything, but when you get Charlotte Hale in front of the building looking like she's the pupil of an eye, I thought that's beautiful shot. And as you say, all the mirrors there, just kind of like hinting at this idea of a mirror world, which we will get onto. I know we've both done videos on it, so we will definitely talk about that in a little while. But also this idea of who am I, which really came through it. We had a super chat actually before we went live from Shili NY saying, "Hi Robert, I thought episode 3 was fantastic, but professional critics are hating on the season with silly nits. What is your personal opinion of the season and episodes?" I'll come to you in a moment, Hax, but I just wanted to, as this is sort of an overview thing, let's kick off here as well. I love this season. I really do. I try not to pay huge amounts of attention to what professional critics say. I think that when Westworld has proven itself, both of its first 2 seasons, to be a must-watch twice TV show, intelligently written, and it's only on the second watch through that you actually can truly appreciate everything that they're doing. I think this season is going to be exactly the same. I think that what they've done, the acting is still top-notch. The visuals that we were talking about just a moment ago, again, notch. The way that they have shifted from being within the park to outside the park, and yet retaining the feeling that we had before, I think is absolutely wonderful. So I'm loving it. And that's not just me with a fan head on. I genuinely think this is excellent TV. It's not TV that you can just have on in the background and just like let it wash over you. You do have to concentrate on it. And I've certainly found a lot of the reviews that I've sort of skimmed through, it's quite clear that they haven't been actively watching it. They have just sort of been letting it wash over them. But what's your view on the season so far, actually, Hax, while we're on this one? Do you agree with these critics, or are you with me on this one?
I fully expect to be called an HBO shill for the rest of my YouTube career, and I'm totally fine with that. And the criticism of this season are just so misguided or misplaced. I just can't empathize with where they're coming from, or why they're so critical of it, or what exactly they're picking apart. I mean, what I'm watching is this masterful story that's just like slowly developing in front of us until a big reveal. And that's the plot that they've done in season 1, season 2, and that's their storytelling mechanic. I'm totally fine with that. I like that. It lets us theory craft, it lets us get into it and immerse ourselves more, and then boom, we either get it right or we don't, and then it's still a great story at the end of it. I think that I think that the people who pick Westworld apart, and I can't even say, like, I see at the end of season 2, I fully had issues with the season. In retrospect, like now knowing that Charlotte is this person and played this role, 100% eases my criticisms of season 2, because again, they waited 2 weeks to save trillions in IP. So like I don't think that I fully commit to just supporting the show 100%. I love the show, but I love it for reasons that I can talk about, and whenever someone talks about not liking the season, it seems like they never have a justifiable reason to not like the season.
Yeah, I think I'm with that. I mean, everyone's allowed to have their own opinions on stuff, and everyone's allowed to like some things and not like other things. But in terms of the quality of what is being presented, it is incredibly high, is my general view. So let's take that as read for the time being. I have said many times on this channel, I only cover things that I personally enjoy. So if I stop enjoying something, then I'm not going to be covering it, because I'm not going to spend my time trying to pretend to like something I don't. I am genuinely enjoying this, and I'm genuinely enjoying discussing the questions that it raises, not just in terms of what's going on in the plot, but in the sort of the slightly higher level questions, as all good sci-fi does ask, about who we are now in our civilization, what's going on with us and us as humanity. While I'm talking about pre-show live streams, we had another from Maura Lee. Maura, thank you so much. Incredibly generous, Maura. Thank you. Another nurse, incidentally. So thank you, Maura. There are lots of nurses out there and people on the front line that we're just doing our bit by staying at home and trying to provide as much entertainment and diversion as we can. But there are people doing many more wonderful things out there. So thank you. But your super chat saying, just a show of immense admiration and support for all the fabulous content and stories on both channels. Thank you, dear Robert, for all you do during these times. And also for Hackstobber and This Grey Area. As I say, unfortunately, she can't be here today. You both rock. Capitals for rock there. So there you go. Hacks, you get capitals rock.
Love it.
Okay, let's move to a sort of a breakdown then of last week's episode 3. There were very broadly two storylines we had going on here. One of them, which we'll pick up, I think, first, which is the sort of the continuation from the Dolores storyline from when we last saw her in that sort of alleyway underpass being cradled by Caleb. And then the second one, which was the slightly chunkier storyline, which was the one about Charlotte Hale and who she is and all the rest of it. So why don't we, first of all, just pick off this one with Dolores. I'm happy for any thoughts you have on this one as a whole, but the big question I got for you, I think, which is, why does she pick Caleb? You think? Because basically what happens in there is that she gets Caleb rescues her, and she basically tells him, run away now, but then she basically picks him to be part of her team, having only met him reasonably briefly. Why do you think that is?
I think wholeheartedly this points to her having information that we don't know yet. I think this points to possible access to Rehoboam, possible, further insights into something. But Rehoboam is this big, mythical creature that we still have to see and meet and learn how it works, right? And she has information that we just don't know, because exactly why? Why would she want this person that society doesn't want? I think it like the face value of it, I believe that they're trying to depict this like manipulation of humans to lift up the little man, to start a revolution, have humanity versus humanity be the ultimate way to destroy humanity. And I totally on board with that plot. I just feel like I don't know. It seems like more, and it seems like all of it is Dolores's manipulation of this one person, and theory crafting why. I think it only points to her having Rehoboam information, and yeah, I mean, I don't know what else it could be outside of that. There's nothing like he's a probable medic in the military, and I don't think that there's not been any other information that's like really stood out that made me think that he could be something of use to her.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the whole point is that he's an everybody. He's somebody that we can all kind of feel for. He's nothing particularly special.
Yeah.
Now we know that she's active because she sort of brings it in to Connell, whoever the host is, pretending to be Connell, and saying, I need some information about this guy. And it does make me wonder whether or not it's because, well, there are a couple of things that we know. So he's gone off grid, which is good for her. So he does have that. He's switched off his implant and he's already on the run and all the rest of it. So he is off grid. He has surprised her. She's admitted, I think she was telling the truth, by what was a genuinely self-sacrificial act of refusing to say what he knew about her and actually being willing to die for her. So there is that. But that, at the moment, doesn't add up, I would agree, to enough of a reason to pick him in particular, unless her plan just requires a person, and she thought, well, this guy will do. That is possible, but then the fact that we've got all these hints about background to him, which is the second thing I was wanting to pick up on, is we didn't really get huge amounts more about his background. Again, we got this sort of him seeing his mother, and again, there's this, you're not my son kind of idea going on. We are going to get more about this. I think that the question, this will be the thing which shows whether or not there is more to him. Because if this is just like a little bit of extra backstory, telling us a little bit extra about the world, yeah, maybe he's got a bit of an interesting past. Maybe they'll use him to show us a few extra things. Okay, fine. If it's that, then it is just that he is a person. But if he is doing something, then perhaps there is something more to this. Have you seen any hints that his past is something special in any way, other than, or maybe actually you want to talk about this, I've been shot in the head business?
Yeah, I think it definitely seems like they're hinting at what may be a legitimate thing, what may be a red herring, of I'm not the real person, I'm not the real there's a voice in my head of a dead person. There's my mother doesn't recognize me. There is he's not a member of society. He's turned off the things that make up the culture now. I think that that's like, I don't know. I think it could be pointing to something greater, but I just don't think. I think that we're missing like one tiny bit of evidence that's going to wrap all of that into one theory about why he was picked. But until we get that, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and until we get further information, this is one of those things that I think we have to be honest and say we don't have the information yet.
Yeah.
Until we do, I'm going with the idea that he is just a normal person that surprised Dolores, and she thought, well, I need somebody to help me out. He'll do. But maybe there's something more, and maybe we'll learn a little bit more. Susan Dunkel, thank you so much for the super chat. I spotted it. We're going to be talking about Mirror World in a moment, so I'll answer that when we get to the discussion about Mirror World, if that's okay, rather than sort of jumping around a little bit. And David Marin saying, thank you first of all so much for the super chat, saying, has it been discussed why there are so few people in the real world? Post-war, ? Post-pandemic? Type birth controls because of Rehoboam, as hinted in Caleb's info screen. Now, this is something a few people have said to me, this idea that there aren't many people there. And it's not something that I personally picked up on just from watching it. It's really when you sort of look back and you go, so, okay, yes, if you imagine this is some kind of like huge metropolis, normally when we're thinking of this kind of Blade Runner-esque future, then everybody's all packed in tight and all the rest of it. And, if you go to any large metropolis these days, again, it seems incredibly busy, but that world doesn't seem that way. I don't think we've heard anything, and Hax, I'd love your take on this. I don't think we've heard anything other than what you've hinted at there, which is the fact that Rehoboam seems to be deciding who's allowed to have children and who's not. And that would, over time, start to reduce the population. But even that, you have to say, okay, well, fair enough. Is there time for this to make such a huge impact on society? It's not 100% clear, because we're talking a couple of decades. We would still have a huge, yes, it would slow the rate of birth, but whether it would have that much of an impact, I don't know. But is this something you've been noticing and thinking about the population?
So I have seen a fair bit of comments that point this out, and point one other thing out that I'll get to in a second, that if the showrunners are trying to craft this world of world management and utilitarian control, then I do think that if they were trying to show anything, it would just be how efficient they could possibly route people. How people's lives could be mitigated to the point of reducing traffic to zero. There's models out now that show, like, if all cars drove at a same distance behind the other car, that traffic would be reduced to nothing. And now modern day, we could eliminate traffic entirely. So this is probably, if they're trying to point to anything, which is debatable, because it's such a background thing, literally background thing. But if they're trying to say anything, I think it's probably that. One thing that I've been seeing in my comments a lot is this idea of masks. Have you seen that, Robert? Like, everyone wearing masks?
No, I hadn't.
Yeah, so a lot of people in my comments are pointing out, like, how weird it is that the showrunners guessed, COVID-19 and just this idea of people wearing masks. So if anyone was confused about that, the reason that I've kind of, what I think is happening is that foreign countries have been wearing these masks for a long time. Like population density, it's just like a part of culture, long before anything about this has happened. So it's pretty common, and I think it probably points to either like globalization or foreign countries and stuff like that. So if anyone along the same line of thought with people in the background, that's probably why. Yeah, a lot of people wear masks.
And a lot of this is filmed in Singapore, which is one of the countries that has got a lot more of a tradition of wearing masks. It's incidentally, it's wearing a mask in order to protect everyone else. Is the culture. Is that if you've got a cold or something, even before what's happened recently, then you might wear a mask so that you don't spread it to other people. And that's actually seen as it's a sort of you're serving other people by doing it, rather than you're thinking that the world might get you in some way. So yes, if you see lots of people in the background wearing masks, it may well be simply a cultural thing based upon where in the world they actually filmed it. And incidentally, it also may well be, as I think a couple of people in the chat have pointed out, if they filmed it there, if they're pretending that this is actually set in, say, California, then the amount of people who look like they might live in California, they might have to pick and choose the extras, which might mean that they got slightly fewer people that they can use. So there might be some very mundane reasons for this, as well as the more sort of sci-fi ones.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else on that sort of first bit of story with Dolores and Caleb that you want to pick up on before we move on to the sort of the slightly chunkier Charlotte's issues?
We're going to talk about the second half of their story with Mirror World later on.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we could move on then.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's do this. So let's start at the beginning here in saying, okay, so this seems to be picking up pretty soon, as with all these things, seems to be. We'll talk about timelines as well in a moment, I think. But this seems to be picking up pretty soon after Dolores arrives on the mainland. and she gets. Is Charlotte Hale. She sort of built her own body, puts herself back into her own body, it would appear, and then gets Charlotte Hale, whoever's in Charlotte Hale, out there. Has to happen reasonably quickly before people miss her. And then we get the storyline. Now, just let's start with a bit of speculation. I think we've done this speculation every episode so far, but let's do it again, because otherwise we'll be missing a beat. I did a video a couple of weeks ago where I was reasonably confident that this was in fact Peter Abernathy. Good reasons. I don't think that anymore. I now think, I'd be interested in whether you're on the same page as me, that perhaps what we're seeing is a kind of a split between the two parts of Dolores, the Wyatt part and the Dolores, the rancher's daughter part, 1:1. So the Dolores is Wyatt, and then Charlotte Hale has Dolores inside her. Now, where are you on that, or do you have a completely different idea on who might be inside Charlotte?
So I am totally on board with that. I think that that's right. I think that there's a statue in the background of two people pulling each other apart, right, in one of their scenes right before they cuddle, and I think that they are as plainly as humanly possible telling us that she has split her personality, and that is what's happening. I do want to add that I don't think that Dolores murders that person. I don't think Farmer's daughter Dolores doesn't, choke a man to death, regardless of what they've done. She's. I can't explain that a little bit. My theory, if it is her, then I think that they're going to justify it by saying that she is, in that moment, she's remembering that she's a predator. So Dolores split her personality. Wyatt is in one. Dolores, farm girl, is in the other. But she is remembering the Wyatt in her, right? Because we don't know that she's ever been tasked with anything else. She's the oldest host in the park, and she has played this one role. Unless that's wrong, I don't think she's had any other roles. She literally couldn't remember being anyone else but Wyatt, and I think it's possible that that's what they're doing. I also think that it's possible that they're showing us multiple people in Dolores. And I mean, possible simulation of, hey, what if we put, Dolores in Charlotte Hale? What if we put, Angela? What if we do this? And it's trying to figure out who would best, get to the end of this plot that aligns with their best interests. Also pointing to, this pre-information of having Rehoboam. I don't know. I think that Dolores' split personality works. I just cannot fathom Dolores doing that. And I think that that's because it just screams parental. When she does that, I'm just yeah, that is a mother, that is a father that, would otherwise not be able to murder this person that was threatening their child. And they're just do it,
Yeah, I've got other theories on that strangling, which we'll come to with the Mirror World thing, because I think it's partly connected to that.
Nice.
But the two bits of information which I think are really important in terms of who this might be are when Dolores says to Charlotte, "You belong to me," and also when she says, "I know you better than anyone else does," and vice versa, "You know me better than anyone else does." Those two things. So the second thing there implies an incredibly close relationship between those two characters, whoever they are. I own you, or you belong to me. That is more than that's the thing that made me think, well, this can't be Peter Abernathy. This can't be her father, because that's not a thing that she would say to him.
Yeah.
You belong to me.
Yeah.
It's almost as if you were part of me and I own you. So that's where I got to that. The other thing, which is, again, it's a sort of a language thing, and I had to watch it back because Tessa Thompson sort of garbled the line. I wonder whether it was just to try and sort of hide a clue in there. But there's a point when she says to Dolores, she says, "Yeah, when we can be. Tell me there was a time when we can be ourselves again. And that implies that at the moment neither of them are themselves. So it's not Dolores isn't Dolores, Charlotte Hale isn't Charlotte Hale. The wrong people are in the wrong bodies in some way. So it's not that Dolores is not herself. It's only a part of her or someone else in there or something like that. So I headline. I'll have a quick look in the chat in a moment in case anyone else has got any fantastic ideas. But I think the short answer is that we did not get fundamental proof here about who these characters are.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that one?
And I was really hoping. I hope this episode we find out who it is. At the end of season 2, I was like, the entire season 3, we're going to be guessing who these pearls are, and of course, that's exactly what's happening. So I hope we get to that point where we know sooner rather than later. But at the same time, it feels like a big reveal. So someone posted in chat about William being inside of Hale, and I was racking my brain like Tuesday or Wednesday night trying to figure out how William couldn't be Charlotte Hale. It was like, I don't know why, but it got stuck in my mind, and everything was like, wow, yeah, if tell me it won't always be like this. No one knows you better than I will, or than I do, pointing to their relationship and how, like, his yearly, pilgrimage to the park. I don't know. I think that more ultimately, I guess there's not really anything to disprove any theory, but I think that more evidence aligns to her splitting personality right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think would William really? Yes, okay, fair enough. The beginning bits when he's like, "Who am I? Why do I have to be her?" Maybe, but the moving through it all, the uncertainty, the self-doubt, the accepting without any debate that they belong to Dolores, that doesn't appear to me to be anything like William. There was a couple of people in the chat have pointed out a line which I hadn't spotted at the time, that apparently Dolores says, if I can just try and find it, Dolores said, "We have no mother and father now." This is Philip PLC and someone else who said that, Aaron's son X. "We have no mother nor father now." If that, again, that does kind of like imply that they are of a sibling, that they're the same kind of level, the same parentage. We never hear about Dolores having any other siblings, and if we then take the view that Peter Abernathy hasn't come out, we didn't hear about the mother at all since episode 1 or 2 of season 1. So I think that we can be reasonably clear about that. That all it adds up, but I don't think we've yet got the full evidence for that yet.
Who do you think that she would say that to? Right? I forget have we seen that, or is that a trailer?
I don't know. I didn't pick up on it. But a couple of people in the chat have said it. Guys, if you are one of the people who said that, if you could just let us know where that is, that would be really good. Ben Noodleman saying, given what you've just said, Bernard as Hale. I mean, again, I'm with the view that Bernard would not have accepted without any thought, yes, I belong to you. That's not what Bernard is about, nor would he instinctively go along with Dolores's plan. Vigstable, thank you so much for the super chat, saying, notice this in episode 3. Hale goes to see Serac, and the woman who comes up to her says, "I hope we can be friends." This is the same thing Hale says to Teresa in season 1 when they meet in Hale's room. So that's quite foreshadowy, perhaps. So what might that mean? So Teresa obviously dies. Are we expecting to see Hale die? I'm not entirely sure.
I think to jump in there, I think like also that in that opening scene of of her giving this message to a character that we've never seen before or heard before, Nathan Hale. She also announces her middle name for the first time, which is Elizabeth. And if you search Nathan Hale, you'll find that he was a spy during the American Revolution, and his mother was Elizabeth Hale, or I'm sorry, Elizabeth Strong, but then married to become Elizabeth Hale. And so it's like, or I'm sorry, and then the story of that spy was one of being caught and then publicly executed. So it was like, now that the mother is the spy, I think that this probably aligns to her being caught, and probably not a good ending.
No, and they have played up on this. I saw somebody tweeted at me, apologies, I can't remember who it was, with the link across to Nathan Hale's coat of arms, which was a bunch of arrows.
Yeah.
And if you see what was on Nathan Hale's bed covering or whatever it was he had on there, it was lots of arrows. So they're trying to link across to that. Added to which there was a shot in one of the preseason trailers of Charlotte Hale looking like she's running away, shooting at people. She will get caught at some point, and that is actually just purely on the basis of what we've seen on this episode. Surely she has to be caught at some point. You can't. I mean, you can't pretend to be somebody's mother and somebody's ex-partner and rerunning a business that you frankly don't know anything about without at some point soon people picking up on it. So she will get caught. It's just a matter of how long she can carry on before she does.
Yeah, and just to add to, so I think some of a little more evidence that aligns to Hale being a version of Dolores is that Dolores was the one that read Hale's book in the Forge. And, we never see this transfer of knowledge. We never see like someone, whoever this is, getting prepped to be this person, some kind of rocky montage of studying. That doesn't happen, right? So I think it does point to her being, Dolores, but it also kind of illuminates how the Forge kind of gets it wrong, because even with this knowledge, she is not doing a good job or does not know how to, be Hale without the full picture. It's like they reduce humans down to 10,247 lines of code, but then don't also filter in the experience. So it's not, a fidelity look at what it is to be Charlotte Hale.
No, and this is again everything I'm going to say. This does play into the mirror world issue, because this is a matter of information and limited information. So the Forge has got information on people based upon what they do largely in Westworld or in the parks. And the idea, as they described to us, was that they were the constants were the hosts. They were doing the same things for everyone, and then they could analyze what the guests did in response to having Clementine flirt with them, or having the can rolling towards their feet away from Dolores, or whatever. They could figure out what happened because the same thing happens to everyone. Now that, however, is within this control situation. That means that they would not know how Charlotte Hale is with her own child, because that situation never happened within Westworld.
Yeah.
That's a bit of information, a blind spot that is there. What they have is huge amounts on the gut instincts on people, what they would do if they thought no one was watching, kind of things. So you can actually understand at the heart of people what do they want and what they might do, but not necessarily what they've been socialized, or not necessarily what they would do in situations that are absolutely nothing to do with West.
Oh, I think you might have broke up. Can you hear me, Robert? Ruh-roh. Might have a little bit of technical difficulty. Let me know if you guys can hear me. I can keep talking about simulation froze. Yes, it's all part of the plan. Yes, this is my stream now, boys. Yeah, it's really It's really interesting. So who guessed that that it was Robert in the simulation all along? Anyone have that on their polls? It's actually Robert. Robert is the manifestation of just like the good side of YouTube, right? So I created him to to theorycraft alongside and to take over the world. But now I've been exposed. Let me see. Robert, if you're watching, ping me on. Yeah, we're split personalities. Ping me on Twitter to end the stream if you'd like me to. Yeah, let me see if any questions in the chat there. Honestly, how do hosts reproduce? Yeah, so I think that's really the big part of Dolores' plan in keeping Delos open is just this manufacturing of hosts. Hey, Robert.
Hey, I'm back.
Hey, welcome back.
Sorry about everyone. My internet seemed to have gone down for a few moments. Thank you so much, Hax, for keeping going. I'm sure you're making excellent point. Do carry on.
Yeah, just this idea of Dolores' plan being keeping Delos alive, keeping them in control, so that at some point they can start massively producing their own kind again. Yeah, that's probably how they're reproducing. I think that biologically, it could theoretically be possible, but that brings a whole nother ball game that I don't think that they would probably ever touch. So
excellent. Was that you answering whether this is forward in Dolores?
No, that was it. That was if hosts can reproduce.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Well, I wasn't sure how far I got in. I just had a very quick look to see what picture I got frozen on, and it was quite a
it was good.
No, we had a super chat that I was just trying to answer just when we into it. We got whether this was with the Ford was because of, and I'm sure you've seen the picture of her doing that, which is sort of a mirror of an expression that Ford did back in season 1. That does seem to explain why the "you belong to me" language. That is something perhaps Ford could say, if he created all of the hosts. But do you think there's any chance of that?
Well, that is the first time I've seriously thought about it, and holy moly. I think that it would digress in some ways, like this idea of Dolores' journey to consciousness. I don't think that they would do it. Yeah, period. Yeah, probably not, but maybe.
Yeah, I think I'm with probably not on this one, but it's one of the ones that makes you go, huh. I mean, there's no reason probably why not, but at the same time, it doesn't seem entirely right. So in terms of, we have no parents now, and the me as much as better than anyone else, that kind of thing doesn't quite work for that as far as I'm concerned. Okay, let's go with a little bit on and off. Oh, actually, no, let's talk about timelines first before we get on to Mirror World. Let's talk timelines. Now, when do you think these things are happening? Now, I've talked about timelines quite a few times, but just in terms of where the different storylines we've got are mapping together, because at some point they're all going to intersect. Now, the way they presented it is that we get the Charlotte Hale one seems to have roughly happened first, but then sort of we don't know how long that goes on for. That seems to be that she's hanging around for 3 months, maybe. Just doing this, playing the game, pretending to be Charlotte Hale. The Dolores storyline again seems to pick up quite early on, and that the implication is that that's also happening at the same sort of time. Bernard again seemed to be the 3 month. So, but where do you think have you got a sense yet of whether these things are happening at the same time, or whether one of them is all happening a lot earlier?
Yeah,
or
so
later.
we know that it definitely feels like Bernard and Dolores. Man, I don't know. So okay, so we know that they get out of the park in 2052 because of some ARG that was on the website. Now with ARG, they could always retcon it. That could not be the case, but nothing's really pointed to that. We know that the main bulk of this story is happening 2058, right? So I think that it is entirely possible that this is all happening at the same time. I also think it's really possible, and probably more likely, that Maeve's storyline is happening after these events. Such as that we see, in the trailer we have the shots of Maeve hunting down Dolores, but this the episode before, or I'm sorry, this episode revealed that Surak is in the process of taking this company from them. And it's not explicitly stated that happens. In this episode, I think we're going to see her go and try to, stop that from happening. Probably not going to happen, though, because we know that Surak has a lot of information about the park, and we don't know how he has that information. Like, we know that he stole Maeve's pearl, but we don't know how he has the information of the workers, of the park, like all of this simulated data that would need to exist on some kind of medium to get out of the park. We don't know how he has that. And of course, after the park went belly up, it is said directly in this episode that he does go in and steal pearls and stuff like that. But I don't know if he's going to do that. Or, I'm sorry, if he's going to buy the company, why would he take that step at all? Why wouldn't he just wait until he owned the company entirely and then period, it's all his? Did he fear like a Ford situation where they were going to break all their toys kind of thing before they were out from the park? I don't know, but I think that there's something really weird happening with the times of when these things happen, and as to when, I don't know, but it does seem like there's something off.
Yeah, I agree there's something off, and I'm wondering whether this is linked to Mirror World. And I've been saying we're going to come to this in a moment, but you talked about it, the 2052, 2058 thing. For those who are unaware of this, all the way through seasons 1 and 2, we were under the impression that this happened in the year 2052. And that seems to be, we've got a date stamp from when Maeve was first escaping. There was a CCTV camera in that train station we saw. We got I think it was June the 15th, 2052, something like that. So we know when that happened. We've had nothing to dispute that ever since. In fact, a couple of hints that's right. Then this season, they went big. Welcome to 2058. 2058 was the pre-publicity. Yeah. Now, immediately you have to go, well, hang on a moment. As far as we can tell, only 3 months have passed since the events of when Maeve was first trying to escape, because that was around the same time that Dolores was doing her massacre in Westworld. So what's going on? I mean, yes, it's possible that the showrunners have just completely forgotten that they said it in that year and they've just changed it and are hoping nobody noticed. But I don't think that's likely. Which leads me to wonder whether we are in 2 different timelines. Now, this is my take on Mirror World. We may have to build up to this and talk around it quite a lot to sort of get a clear understanding of what's going on there. But as the phrase Mirror World comes from Dolores explaining to Caleb how Rehoboam works. And she says it's got all of this information and it creates a mirror world where it's effectively playing out things to a mirror world to the real world. So we've got 2 worlds going on already that we've been told. There's a simulation world and there's a real world. Now, I do wonder, and I don't think we've got enough information yet to be sure on exactly how this works out, but there was a throwaway line by Sarak when he was saying to Charlotte Now, who could have predicted that Dolores was going to rebel? Well, actually, we predicted it.
Yeah.
It had been already working way before that, and in their simulation, they'd already got this idea that there was going to be this host uprising. Maybe they just got the date wrong, and maybe the two worlds we've got going on are in these two different timelines, and that is why we're seeing some of these discrepancies. So why don't you start with that idea? How do you take that as an explanation of why we might have two different years going on here?
Yeah. And to add to that, I was going to loop this back around later, but the divergences, this idea that possibly Rehoboam is not working efficiently, and it's having more and more divergences. And we potentially saw our first divergence ever last episode with Charlotte reading that tablet, and different words literally come out of this recorded message. So I think it's kind of pointing to this idea that it needs this information, and needs, like, Surak's ultimate goal being to get this information to upgrade Rehoboam, to better simulate, to better just produce better results. So I think this also aligns to that. They could have very well gotten the date wrong. I don't know. Part of me also agrees that it's entirely possible that the 2052, because it's only something that you would know of if you were paying attention, and if you were one of us or one of the community diving into this and taking those screenshots and analyzing every pixel of it. So the bulk community, the audience generally watching this, not losing their mind over it every episode, is probably not taking this any other way other than 2050 or 2058. But at the same time, if they do continue that, and that is absolute proof of two time periods going on, and once again us building to this reveal in the middle of the story that pieces everything together.
Yeah, and I think I agree there. Donald Peoples, thank you so much for super chat. Actually, I was going to say something quite similar to what you're picking at here, saying I think the answer lies in how much time passed between the escape and building the new Bernard.
Yeah,
I think that is quite a big issue, and I think the other thing with Bernard, which doesn't quite hang right with the timelines, is, and we mentioned this at the time, it was sort of like a throwaway episode 1, when he's doing all these self-tests, and he's there and he says, this is test number 300, and I can't even remember how many it was, but 300 and something. And at the time, seems like quite a lot. He's only been there 3 months. That's like 3 or 4 a day. Is he really doing 3 or 4 self-tests a day? If there's a bigger gap going on there, if it's 6 years, then that makes a whole lot more sense. This kind of like every few days he might do a self-test rather than every few hours. Okay, so let's pick up then. If we've got that, I think is just speculation at the moment. There's something going on there, but there clearly was, as you said, something going on with that videotape with Charlotte. Now, I'll just lay out the facts, as it were, what we saw, and then Hax, if you want to sort of speculate on the basis of that, what actually we might have been seeing. So we saw 3 things happen. There was the thing, first of all, it was like this cold open. We get her saying to camera, this is Charlotte Elizabeth Hale, this is a message from my son, Nathan Hale, and then we sort of cut and go to the opening thing. Then later on, we get somebody bringing her the tape, and she looks at the tape, and we see what the message was, and the message was quite a short message. It was clearly quite heartfelt. It was clearly she was there. This was in the aftermath of the massacre. There's shots going on in the background. She's clearly thinking, this is it. I might die now. I want to send a message to my son. But at the same time, there was no contrition. There was no personal stuff in there. There was just, I said I was going to sing you a song, so I'll now sing a song to you, that kind of stuff. We saw Charlotte's reaction. There didn't seem to be much reaction in the call. You're a bit late to pick up your son. So she goes off and the strangling thing happens. Then a bit later, we have time when we see her. It's now after dark in her office. She's looking at it. It's a lot personal, a lot more heartfelt. There's a lot more sorry. I wasn't, effectively, I wasn't the mother to you I should have been. I wasn't there when I should have been, and all the rest of it. And you see it appears to visibly affect Charlotte, that she's crying. So that's what we've been shown. What do you think is actually going on there?
I wholeheartedly believe this is a copy of the world that we're seeing, what actually happens in reality and what is being simulated. Pointing to this idea that someone is using Rehoboam or the simulated mirror world, or those are probably the same thing, but using this machine to figure out how to get their best result, period. No matter who it is, no matter what is happening, they are manipulating this machine to get a favorable outcome. And I think that, the second scene shows this, a longer scene. Now it's edited to where it seems on first watch, it very much feels like it's the same exact thing going on. And it is just a condensed version the first time you watch it. So the second time you watch it, you hear this full thing, you see, her weeping, or not weeping, but emotionally more invested, and it points to this change as who she will be as the mother of this person. But when you actually go back and look at the transcript of what is said, the first scene says, "The night that I left you, you wanted me to sing. You wanted me to sing you a song and tuck you in." And then the second time it says, "The night that I left, you wanted me to tuck you in to sing you a song." Literal different things, right? And that would never happen unless this was copies of the same world and someone trying to manipulate things to get their outcome in the simulation. Now, I think it's impossible for us to tell which is the real and which isn't real, but I think that what they want us to do when we catch on to this is that they want us to speculate why Charlotte Hale would be better with this emotional connection to the kid. Why, because that's the more impactful scene, is like it shows that she is then willing to murder people. She is then off on this, because her whole plan, she is a robot hiding in disguise. Her entire plan could be foiled with just murdering somebody. And she's like, okay, let's go. So really, like, what are we seeing? Which is real, which isn't, and why? Why would these be why would these diverge just because of those tiny little changes in the words?
Well, I will now hit you with my meta theory.
Love it.
On this season, which is based on something I saw Lisa Joy say Lisa Joy is one of the showrunners, say a couple of times in the build up to this, which is that she has a very optimistic view of humanity, that we are capable of change and being better. And that struck me as being quite an important point, because one of the themes that we've been shown through this season is that people can surprise you by being better humans. And combined with that, and equally important for the point, Rehoboam can't cope with that. It does not understand it. The big example we've had so far, Lisai's whole thing that showed Maeve that she was in a simulation the first time round. The simulation got it wrong about Lee Sizemore. The simulation thought that he died for her. It must be because he wanted her in some way, or he was showing off, something along those lines. It could not understand that he was simply trying to do the right thing, because all the information up to that point shows that he was actually a bit of an arse. He was not a good person, but he changed for the better. And Rehoboam could not compute that. We also get other examples sort of dotted around. We get Caleb, who also surprised Dolores by doing the right thing. She was not expecting that. So he has also shown that humanity can be better. And I think what's going on here is we have got an instance where the Mirror world, Rehoboam cannot see, its blind spot is that it cannot see people improving. It cannot understand that people can be better. So if we have two video messages that Charlotte Hale has sent, one of them is her being quite basic mother, just saying, "Hi, this is a message from my son. I said I would sing you a song, so I'm now going to sing you a song." That is in line with everything we saw from Charlotte before. But the second one was her at the very last moment when she thought she might be about to die, realizing that she had not been the mother that she could have been, actually being a better human, actually improving, saying sorry. And that is the one that's in the real world. And the one where has not improved is the one that's in the mirror world. So I think those are the two versions that we've got going on. And I think that will increasingly show its way through this season.
Yeah, I think you just nailed it. Like it cannot comprehend human emotion, because we can't comprehend human emotion. So I wholeheartly agree that if a machine without the ability to comprehend human emotion was playing this back, it also played back, Lee Sizemore's motivations for being something for what it wasn't. That it would show a much simpler message and would not have the depth of a human, sympathizing with their child right before they died. Because wow, what a scene to write, what a scene to predict. I think you nailed it. I think the simpler version is what's inside the simulation. But then I think now we have to go back and see what scenes happen directly after that maybe build the bigger picture of how the simulation's further getting it wrong. Because if it's wrong about this, cascading, everything else is going to be wrong. And that's going to figure out where we go.
Exactly. And the scene after that first one where it got it wrong, she went out. You're running late to pick up your child. She goes out. That's when she does the strangling. So that is the machine getting it wrong. So then after that, it's a random Dolores scene or whatever, and then we go back to see her getting this, and the tears are there in the office. So that seems to be, for me, the follow-on from her getting it wrong is that it thinks that she is just reverting to her old self. And this is Charlotte Hale effectively being Charlotte Hale-ish.
That is absolutely right, dude. It literally, the direct scene afterwards is the strangulation. That means that this didn't really happen. Simulated event. She never killed anybody. Oh my God. I think that we're going to see... I think we're going to see her get caught. I think this is going to be the thing that foils the plan, that leads to the scene of everything collapsing around her, and thus the shootout. All in the mirror world. All of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's I'm loving this train of thought, because then you have to start extrapolating it out. Is there going to be, what is the key thing? Because there has to be a key which shows Rehoboam gets wrong, and that brings the whole thing. And I'm wondering, this is pure speculation based on nothing, because we've not seen him yet. We're going to talk about him in a moment. Every bit of information they've had about William is that there was always there that forced his wife to commit suicide. He is not a good person. What if he, having reached rock bottom, can become better? He can, if he goes on some kind of redemption arc. He is a huge shareholder in Delos. He's very important still to the plot. That, I think, is going to be a massive moment if that's an oversight, a blind spot for Rehoboam.
Totally agree. And it also leads with that. There was a passing line that Logan in the system, inside the Forge, had this passing line that stuck with me forever. And it was them looking to William and saying that he was irredeemable, and again, a system, if it's wrong, can't calculate this emotion, can't calculate humans changing, would view William as irredeemable. Totally agree.
Awesome. We had Susan Dunkel. I said I would come back to your super chat when we were talking about this one. Your question, or what you're saying, was, have you been able to trace the discrepancy in the host rebellion timelines, the real world, and Rehoboam's simulated worlds, to one particular moment or choice that caused this divergence in timelines? And I think that what we're seeing is not necessarily just one event that sort of like has branched off in some way. We are, and somebody said it in the chat, I can't remember who yet. So Rehoboam, in a way, is Doctor Stranging this. It's working through lots of different possibilities all at the same time, because that's what it can do. It can't work out. At least that's my take on it. Hacks, I mean, we're starting to get really quite meta here, but is that how you think the Rehoboam's working? Yeah. Is it one thing, or is it like lots of different things it's trying to do? Are we just seeing the one opposite timeline, or lots of them?
I think that we're only going to see one, but I think it's definitely going to be implied that it can do billions, millions, right? Logan literally says that he was in charge of simulating James Delos. He did, like, I forget the exact number, but it was millions or billions of that of who he was, right? I think that aligns. I also think that the involvement of showing that speed, the relation between real life and the simulation, entirely purposeful to point to that area. This happens, there's loops, because if we're running in tandem, if Mirror World and our world are going, and we're going, at this speed, and then Mirror World is like going past, eventually they're not in tandem anymore, right? How could they be, running at different speeds? I definitely think, it's running these simulations, multiple. And I also think that this aligns to the theory that because there is so much misinformation with Rehoboam, the reason that Serac is needing that data is because it needs to update. It needs another version. It needs the next build that's going to better and more accurately depict what's happening with the hosts, with the world, with everything, and stop these divergences from happening.
Yes, I agree. And there was one more thing, just in terms of the data it has. So they've got some data out. That's what Serac said. Mm-hmm. And something else Dolores said, which was to Caleb, which I thought was fascinating. It was when Caleb says, "Where's all this information and data come from?" And she said, this was before the data protection laws. So they got all this data. She didn't say what the data protection laws were, but it seems reasonably clear that there was something which prevented these companies, to a degree, sort of a stop point on the information that they've got. Delos have been secretly collecting all this data because they're not allowed to do it, because presumably the data protection laws, and that is the information that Rehoboam and Insight wants. So if you had just a set of detailed information about people that took you up to one point, you had to just assume that they were going to stay at that point, rather than extrapolate out from there. So that also feeds into this idea that you cannot see the progress and betterment of humanity. You think that they're just trapped into where they were at that particular point in time.
Yeah. But it also, with that, if they are looking for that forged data, and the forged data is still legitimately viewing William as irredeemable, I think that they're going to try to show us a redemption arc, but ultimately show that he is still very much the man in black of this story. Because again, if that thing is that the Forge can do so much more, the only thing it's really missing is this emotional affect. And if they're making the claim that Westworld and what they were allowed to do when you're truly your true self, sure, yeah, I totally see that. Simulate the entire world with like how you would react when no one's looking. But if William is reacting in an irredeemable way when no one's looking, then I think that's it. He's just simply the doomed character.
Yeah, and we'll get onto him in a moment, because this is the point at which we start. We take a moment just to sort of let people know what's going on our channels. But I would just point out that the Man in Black, from what we've seen this season, is going to be wearing white. Now, is that some sort of foreshadowing about what's going on I don't know. But we'll come on to him in just 1 second, because in a moment, what we're going to do is say, okay, if that's what's happened and if that's what we think is happening, what does that mean is going to be happening in this episode? Because we did have a preseason trailer that have a few hints about what we've got coming up. But first of all, Hax, what have you got coming up that people on your channel or elsewhere that people might be interested in?
Yep. Hey, everybody. You can find me on Hax Dogma on YouTube, on Twitter. And we also have a newly renovated Discord that has over 200 people now. The Discord just had new emojis, new voice channels, everything based on Westworld. And you can find that in the description of pretty much any of my videos on YouTube. And yeah, so come out, hang with us, talk with us on Discord. And yeah, after each show, we also do a live stream over on the Top Shelf Fandom channel. So be sure to subscribe to them as well, and come talk after the show.
Fantastic. I would highly recommend you do all of those things at the Hax's channel. There's a link down in the description, or if you're watching live, it will be over in the chat, I'm sure. As for my channel, covering Westworld Season 3 in full, so if you're after episode breakdowns, theory videos and the like, then do check them out through the week. I do another live stream on Thursdays. If you enjoy these live streams, that one tends to be focused more on the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, sometimes The Lord of the Rings. So that's focused more in on those ones, but you'll be very welcome. I'd love for you to go along and join in there. That I do all the way through the year, rather than these ones just during the season of Westworld. If you've come here for Westworld and you do like things like A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, Witcher videos sometimes as well, then do check out my other content. There's all lots of playlists and things down if you check out the channel. And for those who have been watching me for a while, I have finally reached the point where I am now writing my epic video series. I say epic because it looks like it's going to be quite a long one, about, if in doubt, blame Bloodraven, which is my theory on how Bloodraven has been pulling the strings in A Song of Ice and Fire all the way through the story without us realizing.
Love it.
Finally, I would just want to say, as I say every single time, patrons, thank you so much. I cannot do what I do without your support. I hugely appreciate your support. If you'd like to support the channel, if you want to, or if you want to get access to some stuff I do just for my patrons, I produce some stuff exclusively for my patrons, then there is a link to my Patreon page down in the description. But let's move on to next episode. Now, this is going to be mostly, or the focus of it from what we've seen, is going to be about the introduction of William the Man in Black. So we've talked about it a little bit last week, but Hax, what's your take on where do you think we're going to pick up the story? Because we last saw him in Westworld. I think if we forget for one moment that last cutscene, we can pick up on it in a moment for people who are wondering about it. But that is set in the far future. The showrunners have confirmed that. So we last saw him in this bit of timeline in Westworld, badly injured, lying in the sand. Where are we going to pick up his story?
Yeah, so we've discussed this a few times where, you know, the big things that point to his absence on the board, right? You know, it's implied that he should very much be there. It's implied that the mission that Hale now needs to go on to convince, or to not lose the company, is convincing William. His whereabouts, really, we can only speculate now in season 3. And what we have to go off of that is what he did in the park, right? So he murdered his daughter and other members of QA, right? So I think that a prison scenario is definitely likely. I think that his mental health also was hugely, you know, talked about. He literally has scenes of him cutting his arm open, you know, before collapsing outside of the forge. And, you know, someone picking him up and viewing this could very well see that you know, was a suicide attempt. And a lot of things point to his final trip at Westworld being a suicide attempt. And excuse me. And, you know, so I think that there's a mental health aspect. I think that there is a prison aspect, but ultimately it is this idea of him being in bondage somewhere, right? Him being taken against his will and meant to serve time. And I think that all of that aligns with what we've seen in the trailer of this mythical Dolores appearing before him.
Yeah. And I think that I wouldn't disagree with any of that. He has hit rock bottom is the basic point we've got here. Now, whether he's been taken somewhere against his will or whether he has self-admitted himself, I don't know.
Also true.
What we see from the trailer, there seem to be roughly two bits to this. One of them, he seems to be in his old house. It seems to have been trashed. I don't know whether he did that or others did that. He shoots a mirror. He walks on some broken glass. He seems to sort of put himself into the bath that his wife committed suicide in. So he's really wallowing in it. Then the second lot of things we've seen from various preseason trailers seem to have him in some kind of institution. As you say, could be prison, could be some sort of mental hospital. It's not entirely clear. And I think what we don't know yet is whether the bits that look like he's in his home actually happen, or whether this is just him sort of remembering stuff and we don't see him until he's sort of going back through stuff, reliving things or something like that. So I think I'm with you that we will pick up his story with him in this. I mean, I'm gonna my gut instinct is that this is some kind of mental hospital.
Yeah.
If only because in the trailer for episode 4, they show us this rather slick-looking building. The implication is that this is where he is, and that looks more hospital-like than prison-like, to my eyes at least. But who's to say?
Yeah.
The implication, and I'd be interested to know whether you agree whether this is going to be the case, is that how he intersects with this story, how we get our way into this, is that this is because Dolores and Charlotte Hale, or perhaps just Dolores, pay him a visit because they want him to help out with buying back the shares for Delos, or trying to prevent the hostile takeover. Do you think that that is how we're going to get our way into his story?
I think so too. I think definitely possible. Costume Co points out that it could be after the funeral in chat there, because he is wearing a dress shirt. Possible. Definitely possible. After going to your daughter's funeral that you just murdered would be a really interesting dynamic. And it also could be pointing to him wanting to go to this mental health facility, in the sense that he is now the only one who knows what happened to his child, and he is lonely, hits rock bottom, and needs to go. But I think that also aligns to a level of emotion that we have not seen in William. It very much in season 1, it was this progression to the Man in Black. This could be, showing signs of improvement. But I don't think we have that yet. If immediately we do see that, I think that it looks really good for the outlook of William in the season, because it is showing him taking positive steps for his mental health. But so much of this, man, just seems, because it does feel like a straitjacket when he's in that room, and he is seeing Dolores in the farmer's daughter Dolores outfit. She would never wear that again. There's no way. That was a sign, a tool of her oppression for 30 plus years. She would never wear that dress ever again. In my opinion. And I think that, him seeing her outside of the park in this outfit shows to maybe him dreaming this like a hellscape kind of nightmare scenario, or, simply pointing to his mental health. In actuality, he is seeing this before him, and needing this help mentally.
Yeah, I think I'd agree there. I think that what we're seeing, that is how he views her. So this is his way of seeing her and understanding her. That he because he is going through the sins of his past, and he was doing this actually a bit last season, if you go through it, you see what happens is he actually, or Ford almost takes him through when he's playing that sort of game with him, taking him from one place to another. He takes him to the places where he was Lawrence, where he killed Lawrence's wife and things like that, and gives him the chance to do a better thing. And so he's trying to take him to where he'd done bad stuff before. And so this is almost a continuation of that storyline of showing him so that he understands who he is. And a lot of this, the refrain in the promo for episode 4 is, "I know who I am." When Dolores is like, the implication is Dolores is saying, "Do you even know who you are?" And he's saying, "I know who I am." There was in one of somebody in the chat, sorry, I didn't spot who it was, said he's going to save the world. That was in one of the pre-season, I think, one of the pre-season trailers where it says, "I'm going to save the world." That ties in with this idea that perhaps he's going to join forces to try and stop Rehoboam in some way. Do you think that he is going to respond, or in fact, how do you think he's going to respond? Let's leave this slightly more open here. How do you think he will respond if Dolores or Charlotte or someone comes to him and says, "Hi there, what we'd really like right now is for you to sort of help us out with this thing. Rehoboam are trying to buy out Insight trying to buy out the company. We need you to be helping us fight back against that." How do you think he's going to respond given this mental state that he appears to be in?
I don't think it goes well, but I don't think it goes well not because of anything that I can really definitively say about William right now. I don't think it goes well because of something that we spoke about previously, where it looks like Surak probably gets this data at some point because he has access to Warworld's entire park, right? In the data of recreating that in a simulation. But I don't know. I think that, something that you said with that line of "I'm going to save the world," pointing to William, going against Rehoboam. I think that there's still a really good chance that Surak and Rehoboam could genuinely and wholeheartedly be acting for the best interests of humanity, because Dolores is such an aggressive force to destroy humanity. She's playing this kind of liberator role of wanting to break this, the breaker of chains. She's literally playing the role of the breaker of chains, right? But I think that is just a role. I think that her goal is still not to, live with a perfect symbiosis and exist in humans' world. I think it is to destroy humanity. And because of that, then him wanting to save the world or save humanity would be, aligning with Rehoboam. But I don't know. At the same time, everything kind of still points to Surak being this bad figure. And this last episode was also, further evidence that he is malicious. But I don't know. Yeah. William's motivation is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think let's get on to Surak in just 1 second, because I think that he probably will make another appearance in this episode. I think it's interesting here from Catherine Byerly saying, "When discussing William, it's important to remember the showrunners took inspiration from the game Red Dead Redemption. You all are great." Still can't say you all. Doesn't sound right off my tongue, but you all. Thank you. But I mean, I've not played the game, so all I know, it's a cowboy game and lots of good reviews.
Yeah.
Whether the word redemption is sort of part of the arc there, but that's fascinating if they have said that they took inspiration from that. One thing I would sort of say that with William is that I'm over time becoming less keen on using this phrase redemption arc, because I think it's slightly overused now. And I think particularly we used it when we were coming up to Game of Thrones season 8 all the time. We were talking about redemption arcs for characters, and sometimes that would sort of work out and sometimes it wouldn't, and that I think is reflective of real life. Not going to get distracted into Game of Thrones season 8. But what if we are talking about a redemption arc of some kind, then this is panning out so far to be like that for William. So we've had this downward spiral or curve for 2 seasons, where we saw him start off. At the very beginning, he was this wide-eyed guy. Yes, they played around with the timelines and everything, but when we first saw him as William coming off of that train, then he was like a good guy. Then we see the descent to the point where he's recognizing everything that he's done wrong in season 2, but he's still doing, despite himself, he's still doing horrific things, killing his daughter and all the rest of it. And season 3 should be the bottoming out of it, when he's having to fundamentally face who he is as a person before seasons 4 and 5, because we were told ages ago that the idea was this was going to be a 5-season run. Don't know whether that's still the plan, but it would make sense that this is where he's bottoming out, facing up to who he is, so that he can very slowly clamber his way up towards some kind of redemption. So that does kind of make sense to me. Otherwise, we've got this incredibly tragic story of this man who started off as actually quite a good guy, but has just got worse and worse and worse all the way through, and ends up doing terrible things even when he realizes that he's terrible.
Yeah, I think that they have to go with a redemption arc. A few minutes ago, or maybe 30 minutes ago now, we talked about this idea of the data, and because they're looking for this affect of the forged data, and the forged data reviews him as irredeemable. I think that would make his plot line very much of this false redemption arc, which, not to talk about Game of Thrones, but we did see that, and we did see that failed. No one liked that story. No one wanted Jaime to go back to where he went back to. So it was. I think if they do it again, that we're going to pick it up and we're going to hate it. So I think that, if anything, maybe this is a blessing in disguise, and the showrunners will now view this as a needed redemption arc to make this character, good again. And I've always liked William. I have always liked William. I don't know why, but I just I want to see more of his backstory, in the sense that he had a similar story to Ford, because Ford outright says that. And, coming up from nothing to build himself up to become this titan of industry and philanthropist. And, I want to see that. I want to see his struggle to then make me humanize his character and maybe justify some of the things that he's done. There's nothing that he's done that I can't justify right now. Like, he thought his daughter was a robot, and, that state of being in that park, and the, coincidental evidence of her just happening to be there when you think that this god figure of the park is messing with you the entire time. Man, it sucks, but it happened, and you really have to question if you wouldn't make that same decision.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between being able to understand it and being justifying it. I would say it's understandable rather than being justifiable, is my take. But I agree. I think he's a fascinating character, and I genuinely hope that he does pull himself back up to a position where he can respect himself a bit more again. I think that's really where it is. And I should probably say, when we're talking about failed redemption arcs, I've got absolutely no problem with failed redemption arcs. I think that they show humanity. It's a matter of how you deliver them on the screen. And that is quite a hard thing to do. But let's move on from the Man in Black to Maeve, because I said we'd talk about Serac. Now, there are a couple of shots in the promo for episode 4 of Maeve, and there's some guys with guns doing kind of like a slow-mo thing when they're all being shot or something along those lines. Did you see that? And if so, what do you make of that? Was that we had a good discussion. I think it was last time about hair movement and things like that, whether or not we're in a simulation or not in a simulation, or Maeve's using her powers, or whether this is just cool looking graphics. So did that look to you like that was another simulation, or was that just real world stuff?
It looks like, so the scene is framed to where it links that frame and Maeve, her looking at this scene to be in the same scene.
Yeah.
And I think that if it's pointing to anything, it's pointing to her then commanding these hosts to shoot each other, or hosts to shoot humans. But I don't know why. And I don't know where, because this doesn't look like Westworld. This doesn't look like, and these hosts wouldn't be outside of the park, but we also see Japanese written on the wall. And I don't know. I mean, I take this as Maeve controlling the scene, her killing people for some advancement in what looks like a warehouse. We see pallets of something, and shipping containers. And I don't really know what we get from that, but yeah.
And I think that's fair. I don't think I know, and I don't think we can know. But where we left it with Maeve, it was back in episode 2. We didn't see her at all in episode 3. So where we left it was that she'd woken up from this simulation. Apparently, there was Serac, and Serac was giving her this little speech about how humanity was just this den of thugs and all the rest of it, and how he really wanted to go off and kill Dolores. But she evidently didn't really like what he was saying, tries to stab him, and he presses a button and freezes her. Now, I think we're not going to just suddenly forget about that, because he says something along the lines of, well, okay, next time we'll do something, we'll do it differently, or something like, I wish I could remember the exact line, but the implication was he'd not finished with this discussion. He was going to reset her and do it again, which leaves open the possibility that that was indeed another simulation that she was in, and he was trying to work through what is it that he could say in order to persuade her to go after Dolores. Because it does make sense, as Bernard has come to the conclusion, it would appear, Maeve is the person who can stop Dolores.
Yeah.
So do you think we're going to see another reset of that, of him trying to persuade her in a different way to go after Dolores? And if so, do you think he will be able to persuade her?
I think that he will be able to persuade her. And I also think that how he persuades her will be a really interesting part of this, right? Because I don't think that he's going to do the same thing. I don't think he's sitting in the Garden of Eden just waiting for that next interaction, so it really makes you wonder if she's, maybe allowed to escape next time, or, where they continue this simulated conversation to the point where their interests align. But it also points to, this mirror world and the concept of manipulating, instances, like instance manipulation to the point where you get a favorable outcome. And I think that because of that, we also have to wonder if, how that conversation, or how we get from they're not aligning to them aligning, and if all of this is simply just the actions of him trying to get this alignment. She could fully think that she is in the real world here, escaping or something like that. But again, all of it maybe just to show that their interests align. And then that be the big reveal, is that it was all part of his game to get them on the same team. And I think that's a really interesting idea, is how that conversation takes place.
Yeah. And so one of the bits of information which was dropped in back in episode 2 was that these simulations happen quicker than the real world, so it's entirely feasible that he could be running a whole load of these simulations one after the other just to try it out, and then put her out in the real world. Or we could have a whole season of Maeve just being in simulations, and then her story kind of bifurcates between this is what should have happened, but actually she then makes a decision to do the better thing. And so the real world kind of splits off in some way. So so let's go with the other thing, which I think is connected with this. which was, and I put it as actually the thumbnail for this live stream, which was that picture of the boy in a field, and there's a sort of a mushroom cloud off in the distance. Now, there was no context to this whatsoever in the promo, that we just had this shot. I speculated, I didn't see whether you have as well, I know lots of other people have speculated on the same thing, that it seems to be likely that this is one of the events in history that we saw in the preseason trailer with Ray Bowen, when it said in the year 25 there was a nuclear incident, a thermonuclear incident in Paris, in France. Serac obviously appears to be French. That's we've already talked about the timeline difficulties, but 30-ish years ago, compared to the time at which this story is happening, it's quite hard to see how old that boy is, but conceivably that could be a young Serac seeing this. That would seem to cement this idea that this is a terrible thing. He has to build some kind of supercomputer that stops this happening again. Do you think we're therefore going to get a bit of backstory about Serac here? Is that what the hint is of what this sort of random shot of a small boy in a mushroom cloud is?
Yes, and also because this last episode, or I'm sorry, this season has confirmed that because it's 15 years after, or it took Liam Dempsey Jr.'s father 15 years to create Rehoboam, and Project Solomon initiated in 2039. That makes the development process start around 2024.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very likely that is inspiration in some kind of way, that there needs to be a better world. This child looking at the scene, it could be Liam Dempsey Sr. It could just be Serac. I read the scene as Serac, but now that we're discussing the development process starting, part of me thinks it's the senior. I don't know. There's a lot of things about this scene that just are really odd. The dead deer laying next to him, maybe a hunting trip that his family was going on, but the city looks to be already burning, like it's some kind of fire going on. And then the detonation of a mushroom cloud generating device. I think that, yeah, I don't know. I definitely read this as inspiration for a better world. Is what I'll take with that.
I mean, I would agree with that. I think there is Costume CA. By the way, Heidi. By the way, thank you for your comments earlier as well. Costume CEO Heidi has a fantastic channel looking at cost shows like Westworld, a huge amount of others. If you're interested in costume, the art of costume, costume design, things like that, then please do go and check out her channel. I'm sure if you're watching live, one of the mods will put a link in the chat. She pointed out that this episode title is Mother of Exiles, which is an interesting phrase. Now, that is something which is apparently, this is a name for the Statue of Liberty, being this the thing that people see as they're coming into America, or the immigrants would see. This was the idea, this gift from France, incidentally, to America, that immigrants would see. And again, this is just pure speculation, not much to go on this, but if there were a thermonuclear incident in Paris, and Serac lived somewhere near Paris and was outside it, and I don't know, maybe his parents died, he couldn't go back to live in Paris because that would be, so kind of a rubble and a ruin and all, radioactive and all the rest of it. Maybe he would be an immigrant to America. Maybe that's why he is based in America these days. So it's as I say, that's pure speculation. Mother of Exiles also does have this kind of feel of Dolores, being the sort of the mother figure to the hosts. Where are there other angles to that Mother of Exiles that you could imagine in this episode that you could think of?
I thought that my first read of it was like, wow, that's the mother of all exiles, talking about William. Like him being in the state of institutionalized, and you know, just like simply that phrase. Wow, the mother of all exiles, the pinnacle of what you could be exiled to. But I love this idea that the Statue of Liberty is the mother of exiles. I've never known that. But now that we're seeing this disaster in France, it makes me wonder if, America kind of comes in and helps France after this, kind of delivering the same gift or some kind of gift, a Statue of Liberty equivalence in the future to France, because they need the help recovering. I love all of that, all of these ideas.
Well, because I love poetry, somebody in the chat, who was it, said, "Can you?" Bunny actually says, "Please read the poem." So the poem it's called "The New Colossus," which is it was written by Emma Lazarus. This isn't my great poetry knowledge. This is something that I had Googled during the week, and I'm just reading it out again. She wrote the poem to raise money for the construction of a pedestal for the Statue of Liberty. The poem was cast onto bronze plaque and mounted inside the pedestal's lower level when it was done. And the poem is just a short poem, and I will happily read this one out. And then after that, as is our way, Hax is going to do some kind of poetry interpretation for us. Go, Hax, but the poem goes: "Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbour that twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp," cries she, with silent lips. "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." Great piece of poetry. Yeah. But the feel is not just of Dolores out in the outside world with her huddle of hosts there being exiles in some way, but it's a welcome. It's a welcome to immigrants and all the rest of it. That's the feel of that poem, which does make me think, if there were some horrendous incident in this timeline in France, where would there would be immigrants? Where would they go? Yeah. Bit of random poetic speculation for you there. The other bit that we saw in this trailer was a shot of what looks like a masquerade ball of some kind. There are people with masks on. There's a band playing. Now, this seems to be a link across again to something we saw in the preseason trailers, where we saw a shot of Dolores and Caleb, who are both wearing masks, as in a masquerade ball, and Dolores then seems to be meeting up with Liam Dempsey again. So what do you make of this? Either of the masquerade ball, maybe it's just a cool thing that they happen to be going to, but why might she be wanting to go back to Liam Dempsey? She's hunting for Serac now, surely, so why is she going back to him?
I think it's just the closest, route to him. I think that now she has this Martin figure, super close. I think that's really it. If she does go back to Liam Dempsey Jr. at all, knowing that he basically has no power, he has, read rights to the outside layer of the system, giving us the impression that he has nothing, essentially. It'll be interesting to know why, other than that, just because it's a route to Serac. But then again, that question's, how does she know that that's the route to Serac? And the masquerade ball, we see the musicians with painted faces. this just like wealth, power, dynamic, people on pedestals, half naked, ultimate, money. It just screams money for me. And it also, when I broke this down in a couple months ago, someone in the chat pointed out that all of the masks, some are painted, some are white, but there are a select few that are black, and the ones that are black are actually Caleb and Dolores in that trailer. So it's like kind of giving us this position that, like, once again, maybe Dolores isn't doing the right thing, and she is the black hat of the outside world. And I don't know. I'm excited to see the scene. I think it is fascinating to look at. It's super creepy as well. Just seeing these people with the painted faces, like they're wearing whiteface, right? It's just something is so off about it, and I love it, man. But yeah.
Yeah, it screams of decadence and money.
Yeah.
I mean, it made me think of Eyes Wide Shut. If you've ever seen the film, we're not going to follow that one down, but that was the kind of the feel of, like, the people who've got too much money and they just want to enjoy decadence. Now, I'd not spotted about the fact that they were the only people wearing black masks. I think that's absolutely fascinating, because we again get this. There was a reference, I don't know whether this is something that they're going to build on, about are you a white hat or a black hat, which was there right at the very beginning. Which hats do you want to be wearing? Are you going to be a good guy or a bad guy? And we saw it with Liam Dempsey, is that when Bernard brought up his little screen of where he's at, it said black hat, so that's clearly what he was like. I don't know whether there's any kind of implication here across with the sort of the masks, whether that's a white mask or black mask. I don't know. My take is the only reason they're going to see Liam Dempsey is in order to try and get to Serac. She doesn't need the information that or the access that he has got to Rehoboam. Assuming, we have to say this now, I think, assuming this is in the same timeline, we're not looking at a different one.
Yeah.
But the sort of the read access she seems to now have. I guess she may have had it for a little while, but in episode 3, she asked Connells, get me some information about Caleb, and she gets the information, and then she sort of reels it off to him about, and you were here in this place when your mum was doing this, and this is what you ordered. So she has all that information. She's got the read access information. She doesn't need to go back to him to get that. As long as Connells isn't caught, they're safe on that.
Yeah.
The only reason I can see at the moment is because she now definitely wants to go to Serac. And she sees him as a route to, either because he's probably the person who's got the best understanding of where he might be, or she is trying to draw Serac out to come to her by sort of getting on the radar in some way. That's the only real sort of link there. A couple of people in the chat have raised this. Do you think we've got any advance on is Serac actually real, or just some a sort of like avatar of Rehoboam? I mean, I'm still on he at least was real, but he might also be an avatar. A lot of the time he does appear to be some sort of projection, at least. Do you have a take on that one?
Again, everything is theoretically aligned to both. I think that it's beneficial for an artificial intelligence to create an avatar of itself, to then legitimize itself to other humans that it wishes to manipulate. And we see that outside human is that I think her name is Martell, that meets with Liam Dempsey Jr. at one point. It's like, hey, don't cross me, don't assume to know anything. I'm in charge here. And so it makes sense, right? Someone exists on the outside to do his bidding, but at the same time, it does feel like it is a very real person. And in my video that I just put out, I kind of break down the scene where, Maeve's hair moves just a tiny little bit after he stops moving, to point that it's, not a simulation. But at the same time, just because it's not a simulation does not mean that it's not Mirror World. It does prove that he is right, but all of this could simply be in Mirror World, and essentially this system would be able to tell the difference, thus traverse in between the worlds and make changes or manipulations as needed. So I don't know. I think that he is real, but it does make sense for an artificial intelligence to avatar itself to legitimize its power to humans.
I think I would agree, and I think we will discover this at some point, but I think at some point Serac definitely was a real person. I think the question is whether he still is a real person. Now, let's talk, before we sort of round up, we've got about another quarter of an hour or so, guys. Now's a good time to drop any more questions in the chat, by the way. Let's talk about Bernard. So we had Bernard in the first 2 episodes. He wasn't in the last one. He wasn't in this trailer. Are we expecting him in this episode, do you think?
Man, I hope so. Bernard is probably my favorite character, maybe Maeve, but I hope so. I don't think anything really points to his involvement. Maybe like Stubbs and Bernard en route to intercept Dolores, which then we have to understand how he knows where she is. I don't know. Probably not. Yeah, I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so.
Yeah.
But it may well be that we don't for another episode, because if we've got 3 different storylines happening on this one, then it may be that they're going to park him for another bit. I do wonder if, when we're thinking about Mirror World, I try and look back at Bernard, and I do wonder whether we've also got a bit of Mirror World stuff happening with him as well. I've already talked about the timeline differences, but he seems to be the 2 characters. We get the first character, which we first come across, which is the one with the big shaggy beard. When he's out hiding away, he's got this button which can turn him into some kind of like kick-ass killer person. That seems almost bad Bernard. But then he trims his beard and heads off and doesn't want to get involved in any fighting. He's got Stubbs who can protect him. That seems like good Bernard in a way. Yeah. So it does make me wonder. I mean, this could just be a sort of the way they're editing it, but it does make me wonder whether we're looking at 2 aspects of what's going on here. One being the Mirror World version of trying to understand what Bernard, who Rehoboam wouldn't have much information about. Let's be honest about this. Would say, well, what would Bernard do if Bernard's out in the real world? Well, probably hide away, try and go undercover, be very paranoid, and if somebody comes at him, then he would probably fight them off. That seems a downbeat view of Bernard rather than a slightly more upbeat of, what am I going to do? I'm going to go back to Westworld. I'm going to try and find Maeve. I'm trying to sort all of this out. That seems a lot more of an upbeat view of Bernard. So just a theory, but as I say, I suspect it may be that we don't get to see him.
I think I view that switch as like the, remove all motion, analytical, do what needs to be done kind of button, right? But
yeah,
I think that it may also exist as this like duality of Bernard's, maybe also pointing, because in this last episode, they also retconned this idea of Dolores recreating him from memory, which I'm glad that they did, because she outright says that she could do that. Thus, all of our theories of, included this concept or variable of that is theoretically possible for any host that, could in time know Dolores, or any other host that could then recreate any other host. But I think that there's a route that exists in which both are right, in which is not really a retcon of Dolores shows that he has, or that she has this pearl of Bernard, and then says outright at the end of season 2 that he was recreated. What if both of those are true, in the sense that this is 2 Bernards and he was given the switch to, go back and forth? And maybe that was Dolores' plan all along, because she intended, or had already at that point split her personality, 2 Doloreses, two Bernards, and we see one where they're in the same body and then one where they're in different bodies.
Yeah.
Maybe a little convoluted. I don't know, but I don't know. I could see it. Yeah.
I mean, I like it. I like the theory a lot. I think that the thing that they again pointed out for us in episode 3 was this. Charlotte says, "Why did you bring him back?" And she says, "We've all got our role to play."
Yeah.
And the hint, he clearly has got something. Dolores wants him to be doing a thing.
Yeah.
So we have to keep an eye out when we see Bernard. What is it that Dolores is wanting him to be doing? Again, if we're thinking about this in Mirror World terms, is she thinking he's going to do this thing because he's a good person who's trying to make the world a better place, and Rehoboam has a blind spot there because Rehoboam would not understand that that's something that Bernard could do? Maybe she put out this story about Bernard being the one who caused all of this, not just to sort of try and help Delos and save face, but also because it means that this is information that Rehoboam's now got. Oh, so Bernard is a disgruntled employee. We don't know much about him, but he's a disgruntled employee who killed lots of people. That is therefore the idea that Rehoboam has got of Bernard. So kind Bernard, who wants to make the world a better place, will be a surprise, a blind spot for Rehoboam. I don't know. Again, it's just that we need a little bit more on Bernard, I think, to actually understand what's going on there.
Just a little bit more. It definitely feels like we're so close to all of it. All the plots are just a tiny little bit of information away.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, we're starting to draw towards a close. I'm going to start flicking through the chat just to see if there's any more quick questions. Is there anything else you want to pick up on, you think that we should be looking out for in this episode coming up?
Always look out for, any times that are shown. Always look out for, I don't know. I think that the show overall is going to have a really hard time with, if things are happening in the simulation, how do we determine which is which, right? How do retrospectively we go back and watch these scenes, and how do we put the timeline together? Like going back through season 1 and season 2, we could, using the aspect ratio, know everything that happened when everything happened. But we have now seen what I believe is a wholehearted divergence in the mirror world and in the real world. And, then we're going to have to, a casual viewer is going to have to realize what is happening when. So what I'm looking out for is that super obvious marker, or, some delimiter that is like, hey, this is how we know. And this is why it isn't some weird editing manipulation.
Yeah, talking of which, there was something, I think it was a tweet from you actually. I was going to ask you about it. One thing I noticed when Dolores was creating, or not when she was creating, but when she was sort of like welcoming the host who was in Charlotte, and she sort of like touches the face, and she sort of like touches the mole on her cheek as if to try and draw attention to it. And I think you tweeted out a couple of pictures, one when she had the mole, when she didn't. Is that a clue that we're looking at two different versions? One where Charlotte is very vain and covers up her mole, and another one where she isn't. Is that a thing?
I thought it was a mole. I think it's probably dried blood, because it happens. Okay. When I first watched it, I picked up this this mark on her face, and I was like, whoa, what is that? She's never had that before. And I thought it happened more in the episode. So I got excited, posted all on Twitter, and it only happens after she cuts herself, after she cuts her arm and makes the marking on her chest, which I guess we haven't talked about that either. But it only happens in that scene, and Dolores even puts her thumb across it, trying to remove it, but realizes that it's dried. But I don't know. It's just something seems off about it. Why show it? Why did Dolores not wipe it off fully? Why did they include the scene of her touching it at all? Yeah. And just something feels off with it. And I thought that I cracked something big, because the only other character that had a mole was William, right? And that was the same day that I was so stuck on this William could be inside Hale thing that boggled my mind. But yeah, I don't think it's really anything, or maybe it is something.
Yeah, I know. It got me. I noticed it first time when I was watching it.
Yeah.
It almost seemed like, oh, you're lingering on that touch. What is that? Are we supposed to note that she's got a mole? I don't know. So maybe that's something to look out for in this episode. I had a question over on Patreon that I forgot about from B, saying, my question is whether you think it's possible that military service in Future World is mandated for imprisoned populations. Dolores told Caleb that the system would only ever let him be a criminal or a construction worker. The omission of soldier got me thinking, because there's a way that he's given thanks for his service in a derisory manner, and we've seen he's got the sort of the hardware implant as well. Do you think that is possible? That military service is it's sort of like a prison sentence? It's sort of like community service or something like that?
Yeah, so I talked about this in the last video or the video before, but I think it is entirely possible that Francis takes the blame for Caleb, and because we see him in an orange jumpsuit at some point in one of these trailers, and military service becomes starts because of that, and it kind of revolves around this idea. I don't know where I first heard of this, but using military service as a reduced sentence. So, you get in trouble for doing crime. You could serve 10 years or you could serve 5 years in the military. And I don't know if any countries do that now. I think someone might, but I don't know. But I like that idea. I think that is a great idea. I think that the military is a great tool to reform minds, for better or worse, I guess, but it could very well be a good step to take in countries that need people serving in the military, and not to say that people in prison are disposable, but I think that capitalistic companies and the prison system very much views people as just send them to the military. We'll get paid $5,000 a month for their service, and boom, we have mercenaries that we could just indiscriminately send to whatever war we want. I think it's entirely possible.
Okay. And there's the link across to we had a shot in one of the preseason trailers of his friend who was in what looks like one of those orange prison jumpsuits. We had a bit of a debate last time about whether it actually is, but if it is prison wear, then that sort of backs that up. Arcanix 1971 says when she shows the tablet, this is Dolores shows the tablet, military is an allowed occupation apparently, so he could go into it voluntarily. What else? There was one other question just to round us off. Yeah, Carolina Mano says, what do you think about how the relationship between Dolores and Caleb will develop? I think this is a great question to round this one off, because they teased again. I keep on talking about the preseason trailers. That's because they did a lot of them. Oh, yeah. Some of them quite small, some of them quite big. One of them kind of played up very heavily this idea of this being a relationship between Dolores and Caleb. I don't personally think that we're going there yet. It seems to be more of a Dolores seeing somebody that she can use, or perhaps a kindred spirit in some way. I don't think we've seen any hint of romance yet. I wouldn't rule it out. There was some sort of visual imagery symmetry. That's a phrase, imagery symmetry. But when she was lying in Caleb's arms compared to lying in William's arms, and there obviously was a thing going on there way back in season 1. But what do you think, Hax? Do you think we are going to see a relationship, or is this just a meeting of minds in some way?
I think that Dolores is like I think it fully everything that we've seen so far. The symmetry, the symbolism of those scenes, everything points to her genuinely finding a good human, her genuinely finding this, like, person that would show her the better side of humanity. And of course, the better side of humanity is, our emotional side, right? The emotional intelligence that could be had from humanity is more than just binary ones and zeros. And probably the most complicated thing that we'll ever try to map into artificial intelligence is emotions. And I think that it's going to show Dolores that side. But part of me also thinks that entire trailer, because it's this rom-com, it literally is like Westworld, but 35% more romantic, right? And I think it's showing us Caleb's aspect, right? Like, he is being manipulated. He is seeing this real thing. And she knows that humans have these emotions and can play off of Caleb to make him do whatever he wants or whatever she wants. And so I see it both ways, right? I see a genuine connection, but I also see a very manipulative person doing what she needs to do to undo humanity. And we have to just hope that she sees the better part of humanity before she destroys it, or who knows.
Yeah, and I think that's a fantastic way to sort of round this up, because I think it brings it back to what I personally think, I said it earlier in the live stream, is the key to this season, which is people can improve. Humanity has got a better side. People can become better human beings, but the machine, Rehoboam, cannot compute that. And that is going to be the key that we've got here. So keep an eye out for humans, and I guess we could say hosts as well, becoming better, because that is going to be, I think, the key to understanding how this season works. Hax, do you want to just remind everyone where they can find you on the internet?
Yep. You can find me on Twitter, on YouTube with the handle Hax Dogma. You can also join our Discord, which will be found in any of my Hax Dogma videos on YouTube. I also have a book out, and that is called Cyclic, and you can find that on Amazon.
Excellent. I'm going to make you disappear for just one moment. Guys, if you're watching this back a little bit later, then somewhere here, always get the sides wrong because this is a mirror for me. This is my own mirror world looking at myself. Somewhere around here will be a link to other videos I've made about Westworld Season 3. So if you want a little bit more on that, do check that out. A link somewhere around about here will be appearing to my Patreon page if you want to either support the channel or get access to some of the stuff I do just for my patrons. Guys, I've really enjoyed this one. We have fantastic discussion. Thank you so much for coming on, Hax. Enjoy the episode, everyone. Take care. Look after yourselves. Look after those that you love. And I will see you on the other side. See you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.